to the Infernal Brains podcast, a joint venture between Tarkas.net and 40K. I'm Tarkas.
And I'm Todd Stadtman from 40K, aka Die Danger, Die Die Kill.
We're the only podcast that will not pronounce the names correctly of anyone we talk about tonight.
I don't know if we're the only one, but I think that we can make it our claim to fame.
Yes.
We're guaranteed not to pronounce anyone's name.
If we pronounce anyone's name correctly tonight, you win a prize.
If you're Turkish. Only if you're Turkish.
Yes.
You can't call us out if you can't produce proof that you are a Turkish speaker.
Be sure to contact us before we're finished recording the program.
Right, because this is live.
The subject today is Turkish Pop Cinema, namely their superhero films, of which they are literally dozens of films, many of which you'll recognize the characters, sort of.
Yeah, I don't feel like we need to give a lot of background on this, because somewhat perversely, I now kind of think of these Turkish pulp movies as being sort of mainstream compared to the other things we write about. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, at least in the cult movie community, have seen at least a couple of these movies, and so whenever I come back to writing about it, well, I mean, even like, a lot of these films are things like Turkish Star Wars and Satan have become sort of popular party movies, so they're like actually frat boys who have seen these movies, you know. So
you shy away from things people have normally seen.
Exactly. So whenever I if I'm writing about something for Teleport City, if I'm writing about an old Turkish superhero movie, it's like, oh, it's very cozy. It's like, oh yeah, old home week. This is like mainstream territory. Maybe that's perverse. I don't know.
Okay, let's start out with a Turkish Batman film. The title is Bedman Yasara Adam, and it's from 1973. It's not the only Turkish Batman film out there. There was another one we know about called Fantoma Istanbul Bulu Salim, and that one is
I think you pronounced that perfectly in my personal judgment.
And that one, Batman actually fights Fantoma, which is the Turkish version of Fantomas, the French anti-hero.
Right. Who pops up a lot in Turkish movies. Is that a 60s movie, that one?
I believe so, but since no one really has a copy of it, that's about all we know about it besides one photo. Yeah.
Turkish movies it's another one of those national cinemas that's really good to stoke your frustration, because a lot of the coolest sounding movies, like with Filipino trash movies, a lot of the best trash Turkish movies are gone forever.
There's a Turkish Batgirl film called Ukan Kiz, which I probably mangled the pronunciation, but that one doesn't seem to be around either, so that's all you'll know about that one. Well, the Turkish Batman from Bedman Yasara Adam basically is a detective guy who dresses as Batman, and he lives with his friend Robin, who's just another normal guy who dresses as Robin, and they get called in to solve crimes, and when Bedman is not solving the big crime, he's having sex with women or punching people.
The movies in general have a very casual attitude towards the whole alter ego idea, wouldn't you say? It seems like it's very mask optional for most Turkish superheroes.
Large fight scenes where he doesn't bother to put on his mask at all.
Right.
But he'll be wearing the costume, and sometimes he won't even be doing that.
That happens a lot. I think it's Iron Claw the Pirate is sometimes he goes out without his mask on, but the rest of the costume, same thing. And then in Three Devadam, which is sort of like, the apex of Turkish copyright flaunting superhero movies, you have like Captain America and Santo, and a lot of time they don't wear they're very open about their identities, and it's kind of like they just kind of put on their costumes. It's sort of like just their working clothes, and there's even a scene where a cop asks Captain America why he wears the costume, and Captain America says it's a way of drawing, because the bad guy in the movie is Spider-Man, and Captain America says, well, it's my way of I'm trying to fake Spider-Man out, basically. That Spider-Man's sort of this weirdo who wears a costume. So if I wear the costume, it's like I'm challenging him.
Yeah.
Basically, it's very. I think it's because of it's sort of a manly culture. So they're sort of trying to reconcile that with these guys wearing tights and possibly. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go back to Bedman.
Yes.
Bedman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you'll take away from the Bedman film is that in the 1970s, everyone in Turkey went to nightclubs every night where women stand around and take off their clothes and sing, and they got really, really excited.
Mm-hmm.
And so like not only in this film, but many other films have just long sequences that take place in nightclubs where they can just fill the film with someone singing a song that was popular most probably in the West or in Europe, just in Turkish, and so you'll sort of recognize it, but it'll have a little twist.
Yeah, this is the only movie that in which you'll see a Batman and Robin hanging out at a strip club.
Yeah.
And it's not part of it's their leisure time. They're definitely not doing as part of their investigation.
Mm-hmm. Well, the guy who plays Bedman is an actor named Levent Çakır, and he is all over the map when it comes to the Turkish Pop Cinema films. He played a Turkish Rambo character in Ramo, which is one of several Turkish Rambo films. He was in Altar, which is a Turkish Conan ripoff. And he was in Three Supermen and a Mad Girl, which is a crazy take on those three Superman films.
Like the Italian three Superman films, yeah.
And in fact, they even stole footage from that and put it in Three Supermen at the Olympics, so he also shows up in there.
And Three Supermen at the Olympics is also, that's a Turkish production as well, right?
I think it's co-produced.
Oh, co-produced. Wow, okay.
He's also in Your Hunter from the Future, which I don't know if he's in the movie cut or the original Italian 4-night miniseries cut. So I didn't really keep an eye out for him back when I saw Your when I was 8. So,
but it's a reason to watch it again, definitely.
Yes.
If you need a reason to watch Your Hunter from the Future again, definitely would be to pick out the star of Bedman, Yarasa Adam, in there.
Yes, he also played Superman once again in Super Adam. That's where Superman is basically a hired spy who comes to Turkey wearing a cowboy hat and barely wears his costume at all. And he's in 2 of the Zagor films, which is sort of a pop comic western superhero character.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen those films, though, sadly. But they do
exist.
But
those are around, yeah. It's on our list. We'll have to do a special Zagor-themed episode somewhere down the line, because there's at least 2 of those movies, right?
Yeah, and then I also found I think it's a Croatian Zagor comedy parody film. I think it's
good. That Zagor needed a taking down. He needed to be taken down a peg. I'm glad someone satirized him.
Yes, so that's what he gets for being Zagor.
Yeah.
So Bedman is actually one of my favorite of the Turkish pop films because pretty much the action doesn't stop. Even during like the long fight sequences, they don't get as monotonous as some of the other films. There's lots of even the nightclub sequences are slightly more imaginative than the other ones, largely due to they show more the reaction of the people watching as opposed to just setting the camera on the lady singing for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I guess they're a little more dynamic.
Yeah.
The fight scenes, I think, are also more choreographed than what you usually see, because Batman and Robin do some sort of tandem moves. They like do some, they do some like choreographed. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous when they're doing like backflips and they're synchronized, and then there's a move where Robin picks Batman up so he can kick a guy, and it's very, and there's some very intimate contact between Batman and Robin during the fight scenes too.
Yes, it's very
titillating.
Yes. It's also one of several of these films where the bad guy doesn't reveal himself until the very end, even though he's the character you figured out who it is because it's almost always played by the same actor.
Right, it's a bald guy, right?
Yeah.
Is it Gunbei?
Yeah.
What's the guy's name?
Altan Gunbei.
Altan Gunbei. Yeah, who was an opera singer apparently, and he. The first movie he appeared in was Golden Boy, which was the James Bond knockoff, and they had him shave his head for the role, and that because he played the sort of Blofeld like supervillain in that, and he was such a big hit in that he kept getting more parts, but every part that he got, they insisted that he shave his head.
Yeah.
So that became like his trademark, sort of much to his chagrin. I don't think he was happy about that. And then he became such a well-known bad guy that he would get attacked by people in the streets of Turkey.
Yep.
Because he always played these kind of Blofeld. Sometimes he had a scar. I can't remember which one that was, but yeah, he had. I think even in Bedman, doesn't he have the cat? Like Blofeld, yeah.
He has cats in at least 2 of these films.
Uh-huh.
And the cats are trained enough that they look at the camera while the whole action is going on.
Right. So Altan Gunbei is basically the Turkish Blofeld.
Yes.
In many films. My only thing with I really like this movie too. The only thing I found parts of it a little slow because it's kind of ironic that with the superhero movies that were made in Turkey in the 70s, it was during a time where the censorship standards were a lot more lax than in the 60s. So in this movie, there's actually a lot more nudity and kind of softcore sex, which I definitely don't have a problem with that in itself. Except that the nudity and softcore sex, the sort of cheesecake and softcore sex scenes, sort of slow the movie down at points. Even though it is kind of funny, because it seems like other than fighting the Turkish Blofeld, Batman and Robin's main job is saving naked women from being raped. Because there seems like there's a few scenarios where they, can conveniently bust into a room just when a woman is about to be raped, and then after they've beaten up the rapist, it's time for Robin to skedaddle so that Batman can get his just rewards, basically. His consensual just rewards, I'll say. But, but that's a minor quibble. And I probably didn't even make it sound like a quibble at all, actually. Well, my favorite Turkish films, it's like I wish I could pull out an obscurity like Bedman, even though I like that one. But I have to say I really like Three Devidam. I mean, that's you can't really go wrong when you have Captain America and Santo in the same movie fighting side by side, and then Spider-Man as a bad guy, and just also because it's sort of it's such a perfect example of that sort of Turkish mashup copyright ignoring aesthetic. I think there's two different types of the Turkish rip-off movies, and I think Three Devidam is the good kind, and then there's the kind like the Superman movie that I think Kunt Tolgar did that, and things like Satan. The movies that are actually just sort of cut rate remake, where they're just redoing a Hollywood film. Like Satan is literally almost a scene for scene remake of. Yeah,
they just slightly make it more Islamic than.
They do some things. Yeah, definitely they do a few little things to alter it for the culture. But it's a sort of thing where it's really novel. Like when you first start watching Satan or you start watching Superman. It's funny at first, but it's like once you get it, it's just kind of okay. I know how this is going to go. But Three Devidam is crazy. A movie like that, they just kind of pick and choose freely from these different pop culture elements, and not just American pop culture elements, but Santo is in it. But then they kind of retool it for their own purposes. They don't really. They're definitely not. These aren't movies for people who really put a lot of investment in canon. It's like the alter ego of Captain America is not the blonde-haired Steve Rogers of the comic books, and Santo isn't the real life wrestler. He's some young guy who never even wears his mask a lot of the time. Where Santo would never be seen without his mask on camera. So it's real. I like the repurposing. I love there's a cheekiness to it, it's not a slavish imitation. I think a lot of people make fun of these movies because there's sort of a chauvinism of. And I think a lot of films from sort of these smaller film cultures, when they use elements, familiar elephants. The familiar elephants I really appreciate in any movie.
That's a different podcast.
Different podcast, familiar, and once in a while you like a strange elephant too. But I don't really want to get into that. But I think there can be this chauvinistic attitude of, oh, they're just ripping off American culture and ha ha ha, isn't it funny? But that's not what's going on a lot of time. I mean, they're taking these things and they're repurposing them to their own ends, a lot like they do in the Philippine films too. And I really like that about Three Dev Adam as well. So, one of my favorite Turkish superhero rip-off movies is Three Dev Adam, which is actually a movie that you can purchase from Onar Films. I think that's still available, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure on what's still available or not.
Yeah, I mean they do. Yeah, I mean if anyone that doesn't know, there's a company out of Greece called Onar Films that puts a lot of these films out, and they put a lot of love and care into releasing these films, and they're all very limited releases. They're definitely not getting rich off it. So if you're interested in any of these films, the ones that are available from Onar, you should buy them instead of...
Onar is basically one guy.
One guy, Bill, yeah. So, send Bill your money. Don't download the movie. Yeah. This is someone you should support.
Well, when Spider-Man isn't murdering girls in the shower and throwing eyeball-eating hamsters at people, he also popped up in a couple other Turkish Spider-Man films, one of which we know only from a picture, which I can't tell you anything about because this is audio, so you'll have to look at the video version.
Right. I think you post it on Tarkas.net though?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the one we actually know about and can see is called Aromsek, which is Turkish for spider.
Right, and the first one is called Aromsek Adam, which actually means Spider-Man. Yeah.
Yes, and this one's the Spider-Man basically looks like a space cadet with a picture of a spider on his shirt.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of sort of a riot police helmet.
Yeah,
sort
or
of
like Prince of Space.
Yeah.
And so,
but he's definitely not as lithe as Sonny Chiba, though.
No. And this Spider-Man gets involved in he fights some gang that seems to be doing illegal gun trafficking and something to do with wine, because there's wine at several of these. There's also treasure involved for some reason, so they're gun running in treasure sites with wine, and so at some point he shoots up a bunch of wine. So I guess maybe they're making counterfeit wine.
Dastardly, definitely.
I don't see why you'd have to call in a superhero to take down a wine ring.
Yeah, really.
Unless it's Al Capone running it.
Who's the bad guy? I only watched the beginning of this movie. I have to admit, I maybe watched the first half hour of it. It wasn't horrible, but it was sort of like, okay, I know where this is going. But I can't remember. Was it another bald Blofeld guy in this movie?
Yeah. And then he has a couple henchmen. One of them looks exactly like Biff Tannen from 1985, the alternate evil universe Biff Tannen. And so they have that guy running around too, which is sort of funny. Mm-hmm. So, and then since this is another one from the 70s, there's a bunch of nudity thrown in, even though this version seems to be cut down to an hour, which makes me wonder what even was taken out.
Yeah.
And at one point there's a sex sequence with two characters on the floor of a cave, and the woman has a gigantic spider on her underwear, which...
Is it an applique, or is it actually, does she know that
I think
it's
she
there?
knows it. There's just there's a big model spider there, and she's not having sex with Spider-Man, even though he's watching from another cave, but...
Yeah, this is another thing about the Turks, is they know how to take us. They can take anything and just make it a lot sleazier, because that's the way they like it.
Yeah.
The Bedman movie was a good example too of taking. You think Christopher Nolan went dark with Batman, but he didn't cheat on his girlfriend and go to strip clubs, like the guy in Bedman did. But
yeah, that Bedman, he'll be on Jerry Springer at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
So a rumsek, well, it's okay. It's not spectacular, but it's not super long too. So even though there are a few slow sequences, it's not like you have to wait an hour for the action to happen. It's more like you have to wait 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's recommended for if you want to see something cool, but it's not the one Turkish superhero film.
It definitely should not be your introduction to Turkish superhero cinema. Who played the lead in that? He was kind of a big, sort of portly guy too.
Some guy named Hussein Zan, who I don't have a big cast list for him, so I don't think he was that popular, but he was a bit tubby. So he looked like, he was pushing 40.
Yeah.
And had too much Turkish beer and cigars and.
Yeah, usually these guys are, at least the guys who play the leads, are at least pretty athletic. But he was more in the of the Steven Seagal body type, I think. And another thing I was thinking, when you were talking about how it was sort of vague what the exact criminal plot in this was, I was kind of thinking about this today because I was watching Killink and reading back over some of my Teleport City reviews. I think it's hard to overemphasize the influence on these movies of the old American Republic movie serials.
Yeah.
And especially Yilmaz Atadinas, who's sort of I don't know if he's the father of this genre, but he's definitely one of the patron saints of it. He did all the Killink movies, and he did Casas Koran, which is the Turkish version of Spy Master. He obviously was a big fan of Republic serials, especially the Republic serials directed by a guy named William Whitney, who directed Spy Smasher, and he directed The Mysterious Dr. Satan, which Yilmaz Atadinas did a remake of as The Deathless Devil, and he also directed The Adventures of Captain Marvel, which Atadinas, like the first Killink film, in a lot of ways was a remake of that, because the whole aspect of the guy who says Shazam and turns into Superman, and he has the big overstuffed chest and everything. A lot of those scenes and those ideas are taken from the Captain Marvel serial. But anyway, structurally, obviously the serials were by nature very episodic, and I think because they were geared toward, a 10-year-old attention span, they didn't really build on a continuing story. How they worked is because you'd basically just see 20 minutes of this serial a week, is they'd basically start out and they'd establish your good guy, whether it was Batman or the Green Hornet, and then they'd establish your bad guy, who was, if it was wartime, it was going to be some Japanese or Nazi spy.
Yeah.
And then from then, it's like every episode was sort of a different thread. It's like episode 1, the villain creates a death ray, and then Batman, thwarts that. So the next one, he, has a burrowing underground machine or something like, and the next time he has a hypnotizing beam or something. So, and that's the way a lot of these Turkish movies play out. There's really not a plot. They're really just about having some kind of thin connective tissue to have a lot of fight scenes, which is what the serials were all about. And so really it's really just about, a film like Iron Claw the Pirate. You're introduced to Iron Claw the Pirate. He's your masked hero. The bad guy is Fantomas. Fantomas comes to Turkey, and then just Fantomas does all this random stuff. It's not like there's like a bomb or some microfilm that has to be gotten. It's just like, okay, the first 10 minutes we're dealing with Fantomas has like a shipment of TNT that he shipped into Turkey. We don't know why, but Iron Claw will show up and thwart that, and then there's just all these various schemes that go on, and so it can be sort of, if you're looking for something to hang on to as far as there being like a plot when you're watching one of these movies, you're going to be frustrated because they're extremely episodic, and really what you have to do is just kind of let the wave of meaningless action sort of just wash over you and not look for any meaning to it all,
In recent years, a lot of the older serials have showed up on DVD and got a lot easier to watch, and like you'll watch those and watch these, and they're pretty similar, and
Yeah.
they all have all of them, like a hallmark. A lot of those will be the character will get in like 5-minute long fist fights
Right.
with 2 or 3 people, and like he punches them all, but everyone takes more punches to the face than an actual boxing match in those 12 rounds, and no one even has a scratch except.
Right.
Unless it's like a Phantom film where they're supposed to get punched and have the ring mark in their face or something.
Right. Yeah, and there's always people falling off balconies, especially in the Republic ones. I guess that was their trademark. But yeah, and it's always a bunch of guys in suits with hats, and their hats never fall off. And that's in the Turkish movies too. It's always the guys always the good guys always just fighting like 6 guys in suits with hats on, and their hats never fall off at all. So that's
they do like the leaping punch where they have both hands out and they hit
Right.
like 4 people and
yeah. Right, and the windmill thing where all the guys fall on top of each other. So yeah, that's definitely the lineage. Yeah, and I'd recommend. I think the best of those, if you really want to get a sense of sort of the roots of these movies, the original Spy Smasher serial is actually really entertaining. I wouldn't recommend watching the whole thing in one sitting because it gets very repetitive, but you will definitely see a lot of great, really well staged, really rowdy fight scenes, which definitely had a big influence on these Turkish films.